Hi friends! May was a pretty decent reading month for me. I read mostly 4 and 5-star reads. I think my lowest was only a 3-star, which is pretty stellar in book reading world. And when I was looking at the books for this wrap-up video, I realized that I ended up reading only romance this month. That wasn't intentional, it wasn't by design. I think subconsciously I was just craving some lovey-dovey content because it is wedding season, it's springtime. We did also go to an engagement party this month, so maybe subconsciously I just wanted some of that type of content. But this tells me that pretty soon I'm probably going to take a hard left and go to fantasies or thrillers or something completely different. So if you don't see something on the list this month that resonates with you because you're not a romance reader, then please stay tuned for next month because I will most definitely be picking up some fantasies or thrillers or middle grade or anything different, because that's typically what I tend to do. If I get too much of one genre, I start to get a little bored and then go in a different direction. So stay tuned for next month. But hopefully in this video I can at least convince you to pick up 1 or 2 of these romances. They were amazing, and some of them might actually make my favorites of the year list. So I can't wait to tell you about them. Let's jump in. The first book I picked up this month was called Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. This is the second book after When in Rome by the same author, and I read that book last year and loved it. It made my favorites list, and this is the sister of the main character in the first book, and this one was just as good. I mean, if I had to pick between the two, I would still pick When in Rome, and I do think you need to read that first before picking up this one, because while they are interconnected standalones, you could read them separately. I would recommend reading When in Rome first because you do see this character in that book and it gives you some background on the town, and a lot of those characters from the first book also show up in this one, so it is a good idea to read them in order. But this one is about Annie and Will. It is very much an opposites attract book. She's very adorable and cute. She's from a small town. She's never really left the place, and he's very much a bad boy, has the tattoos, been around the world, seen and done all kinds of stuff. And I just love the way that their love was portrayed in this and how their attraction built, and the things about her that he really likes and the things that she really likes about him, and where they connected. Like, you wouldn't think because they are from such opposite worlds that they could find that kind of middle ground, but it was really sweet the way that it was written. If I had to pick between the two, I would probably still pick When in Rome as my favorite, but this is a close second. So it is a must read. It has such cute small town vibes. It's very easy to read in like one sitting or in an evening and give you those kind of butterflies. I really enjoyed it and would highly recommend it. And then on a completely random note, the flop factor on this book is incredible. I know these are silly things, but if you're a book lover, these things matter. And this publishing company, Dell Publishing, they are onto something, because this book, oh my gosh, even just for the flop factor, I would want to pick it up. So I highly recommend this one. The next book I picked up this month was actually on my Kindle, and that one was called King of Pride. This is by Anna Huang. This is of course the second book in her Kings of Sin series, and this book is about Kai and Isabella, also another opposites attract kind of story. He's very buttoned up and put together and well-mannered and doesn't speak very much. She's very kind of, you know, kooky and has a big personality and will say anything anywhere, has not very much embarrassment, just very colorful. And I did like this story, but again, Anna Huang's characters are starting to all blend together for me. It is the same male character, it is the same female character, and I wouldn't be able to tell any of them apart from her story. So I am getting a little bit bored of that, but for some reason I still pick up her book. So clearly they're doing something right, because even though I'm a little bit bored, there's something about them that keeps me hooked. It's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and you order a dessert and you don't really like it, but you keep eating it because you're like, I still need that sugar hit and it's still okay. So that's the way I would describe this book. It's not amazing. It's not anything out of the ordinary. She's done it before. We've seen these characters before, but for some reason you just keep going back and keep consuming. So clearly they're doing something right. But this one is about Kai, who is trying to become the next CEO of his family's company, and Isabella is working at a bar that he frequents, and she's trying to become like an aspiring writer. And I don't know, I did feel the chemistry a little bit more between these characters than the first book, which was King of Greed. So I did like these characters a little bit more, but again, like I said, it's the same billionaire status type stuff. It's the same vacations, the same impressing her with all the fancy things. And I don't know, like I said, they're all bleeding together. So pick this up if you are, you know, needing something to read just as like a quick, you know, snappy kind of spicy romance, but I wouldn't go out of your way to go pick it up. If you have other books on your list that you need to get to, this one can probably wait. I gave this one a 3-star. The next book I picked up is called Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. This is the second book after Every Summer After, but these books are not connected at all. They have nothing to do with each other. The characters aren't the same, the plot lines aren't the same, and even the locations or anything, they don't share any connection. So they're not traditional interconnected series or have anything to do with each other. The only thing that they share is that they are both set on a lake and they're both told in a then and now perspective, but completely separate. You could read one or the other, it does not matter. Every Summer After was incredible. I loved it. I read it earlier this year. It was one of those books that everybody was obsessed with last summer, and I didn't have a chance to get to it, but I did pick it up earlier this year and I loved it. And I felt exactly the same way about this one, thank goodness, because I was worried after reading such a great novel. I was like, oh God, is she gonna try to do the same exact thing and is it gonna work? And yes, for me, it absolutely worked. This one is about Will and Fern, and it's, like I said, also told in that then and now kind of perspective. The then is when they first met 10 years ago. They spent a whole day together. They were strangers and ended up just touring the city of Toronto together and being with each other. And the now is 10 years later, like I said, and they run into each other again. What happens in the past is that they spend that incredible day together and they agree to meet 1 year later on that same exact day, but Will does not show up. And so, as you can imagine, Fern is really distraught and is wondering what happened. And so 10 years of wondering leads to this now moment where they run into each other again and she is able to get some answers as to what happened. So like Every Summer After, it has that mystery element of you're wondering what has happened the whole time to create that rift and understand why he did not show up all those years ago. So the story kind of builds in a really fun way, just like the first book did. I would say if I had to pick between the two, I would prefer Every Summer After just by a smidge. There was something about the plot that was a little bit more developed in that one than this one. I mean, I still felt connected to these characters. I still like some of the supporting cast. I liked the setting. Obviously, the summer aesthetics were dead on. Carly Fortune has an amazing way of describing summertime and the lake and all of those vibes. I wouldn't be surprised if she grew up on a lake like that, because there's no way she has that much intel and is able to describe it unless she actually did. But both of the books do an incredible job with that summer aesthetic. But like I said, Every Summer After has a little bit more of a deeper plot and one that I connected to. I think this one was a little confusing at times as to exactly what happened and why the characters were acting the way that they were, but I still loved it a lot. You know, sometimes when you give a book 5 stars, which I gave this one as well, it's not always because the plot or the content is like earth-shattering and world-changing. Sometimes I give it a 5-star because the experience of reading the book was so amazing. Like, I loved every minute that I spent with this book. I turned the pages really quickly. I couldn't put it down. I couldn't go to sleep. I wanted to know what happened. I loved the pacing of it, the then, the now chapters. All of it was amazing. So for me, even though the plot and the story weren't anything groundbreaking, I still enjoyed my experience reading the book so much that I had to give it 5 stars because I love that feeling. So I would highly recommend it. I'd recommend both of them, and like I said, they don't have anything to do with each other, so you could read it in any order that you want, but if it was up to me, I'd suggest reading Every Summer After first. The next book I picked up was Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. This is, of course, the second book in the Boys of Tommen series, and I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of skeptical going into this because I love the first one so much. I actually did a reading vlog for it last month, and I documented my whole journey reading it, and I genuinely enjoyed that story so much. So I was a little skeptical as to how she was gonna keep up the emotion and keep up the rawness of it and just keep it going, but I was so pleasantly surprised because I love this book. I loved it so much, you guys, just as much as the first one. I mean, it is just feels like a direct continuation. They could have just been one book. She does a really great job of making you feel like there was no interruption in the journey of reading the books. So the first one leaves off on a cliffhanger, and this one picks right up where it was left off literally in that instant. So I love that aspect of the book. But this one is about Johnny and Shannon and the continuation of their story. Like I said, the first one leaves off on a cliffhanger. Johnny and Shannon are total total opposites. Johnny was raised in a very privileged home, and he's an aspiring rugby player. His whole life has been just about rugby and becoming a professional rugby player, whereas Shannon comes from the other side of the tracks. She did not have as much privilege growing up. She comes from kind of a broken home. She's been abused a lot and has dealt with a lot of bullying, some really, really heavy things for someone so young to have to go through. And when their worlds collide, you just get this like magic between these characters. And even though it is a slow burn, I really love that aspect of this story, because you become really invested in them as people first before you even start rooting for them as a couple. But even the coupley bits are so good. In the first book, you don't get that many. It's so slow burn while you're still learning about their backgrounds and what they're all about. And then in this book, you get a little bit more of them as a couple and all the things that they're going through and dealing with. I loved both of these books, but like I said before, I'll say it again, this book is not for everybody. It is not for the faint of heart. I wouldn't recommend this if you don't like reading really kind of serious, down to earth, really triggering books. This one has a ton of triggers, and when I say it has a ton of triggers, I don't mean that they're just mentioned. They go in deep, they go into detail. It really goes there, and it's really raw and emotional, and I even found it really tough to read at times. I definitely have cried multiple times in both of these books, but I really enjoy stories like that every now and again. I like the ones that give you that kind of ugly cry moment and really have you invested in the story and the characters and the plot, and even all the side characters. The supporting cast is amazing. Just every part of this book is so gripping, and you're just so invested, and you dive deep, like head first, swan dive into this world. She doesn't leave any room for you to have an escape plan. Once you're invested, you're kind of invested, and I am totally hooked. I cannot wait to read the next set of books, which are two completely different characters, but you do see them in these books, so you get a nice little background and foundation for the next two characters that are going to be mentioned in the next set of books. But I will be taking a little break because these books are so raw and emotional that I feel like I'm always in a little bit of an emotional hangover, and I need some in-between pick-me-up books before I can get to the next one. But if anything I just said resonates with you, if you like deep and emotional and raw and just really layered stories, then these books are the ones for you. But if you're looking for fluffy and light and easy breezy, this is not the one. But I loved it so much. I am so excited to keep reading in this series. So after reading Keeping 13, which was extremely heavy and very raw and very emotional, I needed to pick up something a little bit lighter just to boost my spirits, and so I picked up The Plus One by Maisie Eddings. This is about Indira and Jude, and it is told in dual POV, which I love. This book was trying to do the most, you guys. It was trying to be brother's best friend. It was trying to be enemies to lovers, fake dating, frenemies from childhood. It was doing the most. I was like wanting to shake this book and be like, just pick one, because you're not doing any of them well. I didn't think any of the tropes were done well, and I think that happens when you try to do too much. It's like one of those restaurants where they have Chinese food and they have Greek food and Mexican food, and none of it tastes good because they don't know how to specialize. That is this book. It was trying to do all of the tropes, and none of them were done well, and the whole fake dating thing was non-existent. That's why I went into this book, because it's called The Plus One, and I thought it was going to be like the fake wedding date, but you didn't really get any of that. So I did not like this book from the perspective of all of the tropes, but I will say this book had so much representation when it came to anxiety and PTSD and about like normalizing therapy. There was so much mental health dialogue, and I was here for that. I loved it so much because I think more books need to do that, and I think the more we talk about it, the more it becomes normal and the more we can help each other with all of these mental health issues. So I love that aspect of this book. There was this one quote that has like stuck with me. It was the male character sharing something, and he said, you know, I'm so broken, and she responds with, I'm not trying to fix you, I just want to love you. And I was like, oh my god, my entire heart. I loved that quote. So for the mental health piece of it, I thought it was incredible, like I said, and we need that representation. But for me, the romance, it just did not give me all the feels, which I think is so trippy, and I think it might be because of what I said initially, which is it was trying to do too many tropes. I think if it had picked one and done it well, then maybe the romance would have felt a little bit more like genuine and a little bit more of giving me those kind of gooey feelings. But I did not feel connected to the characters from that perspective. It almost felt like they should have been friends, just really navigating this whole mental health journey, rather than also trying to throw in a million different types of these tropes and none of it landing. So for me, the romance part did not hit, but the mental health conversations did. And I think the other random thing that I did not enjoy in this book was there was a lot of curse words. Like, listen, I love a well-timed F-bomb to really drive a point home. I have nothing against F-bombs or any of the other curse words, but in this book, it almost felt like it was so unnecessary in places. It was like children who were learning to curse for the first time, and they were just using it anywhere and everywhere in unnecessary situations, and even sometimes when it didn't even make sense. So for me, the curse words were not adding anything to the story. They just felt really random and a little crude at times, so I didn't love that aspect of it either. It made the reading journey kind of weird, so I didn't like that aspect. So I felt very confused about this book. I think I decided overall to give it a 3 stars because I really did not like the confusing tropes, but I really enjoyed the mental health dialogue, and so I was like, okay, maybe that just averages out to about a 3 star. So this book probably resonates with some people. It just didn't resonate with me from the romance aspect, but I don't know that I recommend this one. And then the last book I picked up this month, which I just finished yesterday, is called Prince of Song and Sea by Lindsay Miller. This is the Little Mermaid story told completely from Prince Eric's point of view, and I think I wanted to pick this one up because the Little Mermaid live action just came out and I was like, I'm craving being in this world, so I picked this one up. And this one was okay. It felt a little vanilla to me. It wasn't a radical retelling. It wasn't anything really crazy or groundbreaking. It was the story of the Little Mermaid kind of told in tandem with the story that we already know, but completely from Prince Eric's point of view. And I did like getting a little bit more background on him and his family, and it turns out that he has like a curse of his own that he's battling, and just to learn more about like his parents and all of that. It was interesting, but like I said, it's not a radical retelling. It's not completely different. So if you're looking for something really high adventure and really pushing the boundaries, this is not it. But if you want something that's set in this world and in a comfortable story that you already know, but just from a slightly different perspective, then this might be a good one to pick up. I think for me, the reason I gave it 3 stars and not anything lower is because I do just like being in the Little Mermaid world. That was one of my favorite stories as a child, and it was kind of interesting to see things from his perspective. So it just felt comforting. It felt like nostalgia, and it just gave me those kind of warm and fuzzies. But from a purely storytelling perspective and a plot perspective, it wasn't anything amazing. So it's like a take it or leave it. I don't feel strongly one way or the other, but I do know that there are going to be other princes in this series, and I will pick those up just to see how those kind of fare. And if the next one is also just very vanilla, I might not continue from there, but we'll see how it goes. So if you're feeling like you want a bit of nostalgia and you want to be in this world and just see it from a slightly different perspective, I would recommend it, but not anything crazy. It's not groundbreaking. It's not something that you need to go out and buy right now, because I felt very kind of mediocre about it and gave it a 3 stars. So those are all of the books that I picked up in the month of May, all romances, but like I said, I'm probably going to be taking a very hard left soon because now I am craving some adventures, some fantasies, some political systems gone wrong, all the things. So I will most definitely be picking up a fantasy and maybe even a thriller just to like jolt my system a little bit. And then also I've been craving some middle grades. Middle grades always are so good for the soul. So I will be having a much more diverse reading month in the month of June, so stay tuned for that. But thank you for watching today, and I'll catch you next time.